The sun was beginning to set over the long stretch of empty highway, painting the sky with warm orange streaks. On the side of that quiet road stood a small, wooden diner with a glowing neon sign, Steve's Roadside Kitchen. It wasn't fancy, but it felt like home to everyone who stepped inside. Behind the counter stood Steven Seagal, wearing a simple black t-shirt, a dark apron, and his hair tied neatly back. To the locals, he wasn't a movie star or a legend. He was just Steve, the calm, soft-spoken man who made the best coffee and the crispiest fried chicken for miles. He moved slowly and gracefully, wiping down tables with the same focus someone else might use in meditation. A couple of truckers sat at the corner booth, laughing at an old joke. An elderly couple enjoyed their evening tea. A few traveling bikers chatted quietly near the jukebox. Everything about the place felt peaceful, steady, and safe. Steven stepped outside to toss a bag of trash in the bin, taking a deep breath of the cool air. He stared at the open road for a moment, enjoying the silence. Life here was simple, and he liked it that way. But peace rarely lasts forever. In the distance, the growling sound of motorcycle engines broke through the stillness. Steven looked up. Four black bikes were speeding down the highway, loud, aggressive, and moving like they owned the road. A group of rough, leather-clad gang members pulled into the diner parking lot, tires screeching as they stopped. Their leader, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, smirked as he scanned the diner. Steven simply watched them with calm eyes. His face didn't reveal even a flicker of worry. The gang stomped inside, their boots echoing across the wooden floor. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The truckers went silent. The elderly couple froze with teacups in their hands. Every customer sensed trouble, but Steven walked back in with slow, steady steps, unbothered. He approached the counter, voice deep and calm. "Evening, gentlemen. What can I get you?" The leader chuckled, turning to his crew. "Look at this old guy running a diner. Doesn't look like he can handle much." What Steven did next would leave every gang member frozen in shock. The moment the gang settled into the diner, the peaceful atmosphere collapsed like a fragile window hit by a stone. They didn't sit quietly. They didn't order food. They didn't even pretend to behave. Instead, they spread out, taking over 2 tables, kicking chairs aside, talking loudly, and throwing their helmets carelessly onto the floor. One of the truckers muttered under his breath, "Great, trouble just walked in." Steven heard every sound, every movement. He approached the counter slowly, placing fresh napkins and setting up plates like he would on any normal evening. His heartbeat stayed steady, calm, composed. This wasn't the first time he'd seen men like this, and he didn't need to show what he was capable of. Not yet. The gang leader, the scar-faced man called Razer, slammed his palm on the table. "Hey, old man," he shouted across the diner. "Bring us the biggest meals you got. And make it quick." Steven nodded politely. "Sure. Fried chicken or steak?" Razer smirked. "All of it." The gang laughed loudly. Steven didn't respond. He simply turned toward the kitchen and began preparing dishes. His movements were slow but precise, like he was in no rush at all. Razer watched him with irritation. "What's he doing?" "Moving like a turtle," one gang member said. Another kicked his chair back and shouted toward Steven, "Hey, we're hungry. Move." Steven didn't even flinch. But the customers did. A young mother sitting near the window hugged her little boy closer. The elderly couple shifted nervously. The truckers exchanged glances, whispering, "Should we step in? Or let the old man handle it?" Still, Steven kept his back straight, his breathing calm. He plated the food, placed it on a tray, and carried it toward the gang's table. But Razer wasn't looking for food. He wanted trouble. As Steven placed the dishes on the table, Razer grabbed a piece of fried chicken, stared at it, and tossed it onto the floor. "What the hell is this? You call this food?" he barked. His men cackled. Steven's expression didn't change. Still calm, still quiet. He bent down, picked up the fallen piece, and placed it aside. "If you don't like it," he said softly, I can prepare something else. Razer leaned forward, eyes cold. No, old man. You're gonna do exactly what we say. And we're eating for free tonight. Got it. The tension in the diner tightened like a coiled spring waiting to snap. One of the truckers stood up. Hey, leave him alone, he said, voice trembling but brave. A gang member immediately shoved him back down. Sit your fat ass down before we rearrange your face. The trucker fell back into the booth, humiliated. Steven looked at the gang member who pushed him. His eyes, not angry, but incredibly sharp, studied the man's stance, his balance, the position of his shoulders. He read the situation the way a master fighter reads a battlefield. But he still didn't fight. He placed a glass of water in front of Razer and said, Please show respect to the other guests. Razer grabbed the glass and threw the water into Steven's face. The crowd gasped. Steven blinked once, slowly wiped his face with a towel, and then turned away, as if nothing had happened. This confused the gang. Is he stupid? One of them laughed. Why isn't he getting mad? Maybe he knows we'd crush him, said another. Razer stood up, knocking his chair backward. Nah, he's just weak. Steven finally spoke, his voice firm this time. You're disturbing my customers. That's enough. A heavy silence fell over the diner. Razer tilted his head, amused. Oh, so the grandpa wants to act tough now. He walked toward Steven slowly, step by step, like a lion circling prey. The customers watched breathlessly. They didn't know who Steven Seagal truly was, but they sensed something unusual about his calmness. Razer reached Steven, standing inches from his face. You think because you're tall, you can scare us? Razer hissed. We run this highway. This is our territory. And tonight, we decide what happens here. Steven looked him dead in the eyes. I won't let you hurt anyone in this diner. Razer grinned. Who's gonna stop us? You. Before Steven could respond, another gang member picked up a customer's plate and shoved the food onto the floor. Oops, he said mockingly. Guess we made a mess. The elderly woman who owned the plate trembled in fear. This time, Steven's jaw tightened, but he still held himself back. A biker from the gang cracked his knuckles loudly. Let's teach this old man a lesson. Another laughed. He's so slow-looking, he won't even see it coming. Cameras came out. Customers began recording. Some whispered, Why isn't he fighting back? Doesn't he know these guys are dangerous? Or does he know something we don't? Steven took one slow step forward. Last warning, he said quietly. Leave my diner, peacefully. The gang burst into laughter, completely unaware of the storm they were about to unleash. The diner felt smaller now, as if the walls themselves were inching closer with every breath. The customers huddled in booths, whispering, their eyes bouncing between Steven and the gang like they were watching a bomb ticking toward detonation. Razer, the scar-faced leader, leaned back on his heels, amused but irritated. He had expected Steven to beg, to panic, to crumble. But instead, Steven stood tall, steady, and calm, too calm. The kind of calm that made Razer's instincts twitch. Razer narrowed his eyes. You got some nerve, old man, giving us warnings. One of Razer's men, a bulky biker with tattoos covering his arms, puffed out his chest and marched up to Steven. Hey, you deaf or something? He growled. You're talking to the wrong people like that. Steven didn't even turn to him. His eyes stayed locked on Razer, reading him, measuring him, understanding him in a way Razer didn't expect. This infuriated the tattooed biker. He reached forward, grabbing Steven's apron with a firm yank. Look at me when I'm talking to you. Steven's head turned slowly, his movements so controlled it almost seemed rehearsed. He looked the biker in the eyes, a single, quiet glance. Not aggressive, not fearful, just observant. The biker froze for half a second. It felt like Steven could see straight into him. Then Razer clapped his hands twice. All right, enough playing. Old man, you're gonna give us free food. And if you don't, he smirked, we're gonna trash this place and everyone in it. A woman in the booth covered her mouth. Her husband whispered, Stay calm, don't look at them. The young mother near the window moved her son behind her body, shielding him. Steven inhaled slowly. I'm not giving you free food, but I am asking you to calm down. This diner is safe for everyone who walks in. Don't change that. Razer laughed so loudly the windows practically shook. Safe? Safe. Nothing is safe when we walk in. We're the King's Highway crew. You know what that means. Steven said nothing. It bothered Razer. One of the gang members stepped forward and slammed his fist into the counter, cracking the wood. We own these roads. We take what we want. Steven's eyes examined the cracked counter, not with fear, but with disappointment. He brushed aside wood splinters with his fingertips. Hurting furniture, Steven said quietly, isn't strength. The biker scowled. What did you say? Steven didn't repeat himself. The gang member swung his fist towards Steven's head. Fast, hard, confident. But Steven had already moved. Not rushed. Not panicked. Just shifted. The biker's fist sliced through empty air and smashed directly into a metal pole behind the counter. He screamed in pain, clutching his hand. The diner gasped. Steven didn't gloat. Didn't smirk. Didn't say a word. He just stepped back to where he had been standing before, hands by his sides. Razer's face tightened. That was luck. But the customers knew it wasn't. One trucker whispered, "Did you see that?" He didn't even try. He just moved. Another replied, "That wasn't luck. That was skill. Serious skill." Razer turned to his wounded henchman. "You idiot. You couldn't hit a wall right." The tattooed man growled in embarrassment. Steven's voice cut through the tension like a calm wind. Nobody needs to get hurt. Just sit, eat, and behave. Or walk away. Those are your choices. Razer stepped closer. Or what? What are you going to do, old man? Call the cops? Cry? Beg? Steven held Razer's gaze. I'll protect my customers if you force me. A dangerous silence followed. The gang spread out, forming a semicircle around Steven. They cracked their knuckles, adjusted their jackets, burning with the desire to prove themselves to their leader. Customers grabbed their phones, recording now. The tension was unbearable. Then Razer snapped his fingers. Grab him. 3 gang members rushed forward at once. And Steven still didn't move. At the last possible moment, he stepped aside, one smooth curve of motion. The first biker crashed into the counter. The second collided with his own friend. The third stumbled forward, catching himself on a table. The diner exploded with shocked gasps. Steven took one step back, posture straight. You don't want to do this. Razer's lips curled. Oh, I want to do this. And I will. The customers watched like they were witnessing something unreal. How was this older diner owner moving like a trained fighter? Whispered comments filled the room. Who is he? Why is he so calm? Where did he learn to move like that? One elderly man muttered. I've seen soldiers who moved like that. This guy, he's no ordinary cook. Razer waved his hand. Again, get him. The 3 gang members charged a second time. This time, Steven moved forward. A slight shift of footwork, a precise turn of his wrist, a subtle drop of his shoulder. He guided one biker into a chair, flipped another off balance with a wrist control so gentle it looked like he was helping the man sit down, and pressed his palm lightly against the third's chest, stopping him cold. No punching, no kicking, no aggression, just pure control. The bikers stared at him, stunned. Razer finally realized something was wrong. This wasn't luck. This wasn't coincidence. And this old man was anything but normal. Before Razer could react, Steven spoke again, voice like stone. This is your last warning. Leave before someone gets seriously hurt. If you were in that diner, would you stay and watch or walk out? Comment your answer below. The diner didn't feel like a diner anymore. It felt like the center of a storm, calm in the eye, but spinning with danger around its edges. The King's Highway crew stood scattered, nursing bruises to their pride more than their bodies, staring at the man they had mocked minutes ago. Steven Seagal. Not a cook. Not a simple diner owner. Something else. Something they didn't understand yet. The customers leaned forward in their booths, unable to look away, hands trembling around coffee mugs that had long turned cold. Every eye was fixed on Steven, who now stood quietly in the middle of the room, posture straight, hands relaxed, breathing slow. Nothing about him screamed aggression, but everything about him radiated danger. Razer watched him with a tight jaw, trying to put pieces together in his mind. No ordinary man moved like that. No ordinary man dismantled 3 bikers without striking a single blow. One of Razer's men whispered to another, voice shaky. "Boss, maybe we should back off. This dude, he's trained." Razer snapped, "Shut up." But even he wasn't sure anymore. A teenager recording from his booth zoomed in on Steven, whispering to his sister, "I swear I saw a video like this once. Military guys move like that. This dude, he looks retired special ops or something." The sister nodded nervously. "Then why is he working in a diner?" "Maybe he's hiding," the boy murmured. Steven turned, cleaning spilled coffee from the floor as if nothing unusual had happened. His movements were unhurried, deliberate, peaceful. It was the calm after a small wave. Except everyone sensed a much bigger wave was coming. Sandra, the waitress who'd considered quitting earlier that morning, leaned against the counter, shaking slightly. She whispered to Steven, What was that? How did you?" Steven gave her a soft smile. "Just a little experience dealing with trouble." She stared at him, realizing she knew nothing about the man she'd worked beside for 6 months. The silence in the diner felt thick, stretched, on the verge of snapping. Razer finally broke it. "What are you?" he demanded. "Some retired cop? Martial arts teacher? Ex-bodyguard?" Steven placed the mop back into its bucket. "No." Razer sneered. "Then what, huh? What are you?" Steven didn't answer. His silence only made Razer angrier. "Don't ignore me." Sandra stepped between them instinctively. "Please stop. You've already caused enough chaos. Just take your guys and leave." Razer glared at her. "You talking for him? You think he needs your help?" "Lady, we're not done here." Steven placed a gentle hand on Sandra's shoulder, guiding her a step back. "It's okay," he whispered. But it wasn't okay. Not anymore. Razer snarled and snapped his fingers again. 2 more of his men, ones who had stayed near the door watching, stepped forward. They were bigger, calmer, more dangerous than the others. The kind of men Razer saved for real fights. The customer stiffened. One whispered, "Those 2, they look serious." Razer crossed his arms. "Let's see if the old man can handle these guys." Steven took a slow breath. It doesn't have to be like this. But Razer was committed now. It was no longer about free food. It was about pride, his pride, shattered by a man he'd underestimated. He nodded at his strongest men. "Teach him a lesson." The first giant stepped forward, cracking his neck. The second followed, tapping a metal chain wrapped around his wrist. Steven's eyes softened with disappointment. "Last chance," he murmured. They rushed him. This time, Steven didn't step aside. He moved forward. The first swing came fast, a heavy punch aimed at Steven's jaw. Steven dropped under it, sweeping his hand across the attacker's forearm, redirecting the force harmlessly. He struck the man's center of gravity with a palm heel, not to injure, but to fold him gently onto the nearest booth seat. The second giant swung the chain. Customers screamed. Steven raised his arm, catching the chain mid-air with 2 fingers. 2. The giant froze in disbelief. Steven twisted slightly. The chain rolled around his hand, and with a controlled pull, he disarmed the man without hurting him. The metal clattered to the floor. 1 second. 2 moves. 2 giants subdued. The diner was silent again. Razer's face drained of color. Customers whispered louder now, panic mixing with awe. "He's trained. Highly trained. No, more than trained. This is elite stuff. Why would a guy like him work in a roadside diner? Who is he really?" But Steven remained quiet, brushing dust off his apron. Razer took a step back, his first backward step of the entire confrontation. He wasn't stupid. He saw now that this wasn't just a diner owner. This was a man who had lived a life filled with violence and had mastered it. Steven seemed to read Razor's thoughts. You can still walk out, he said softly. No one else needs to get hurt. Razor's breathing quickened, and the rage in his eyes finally mixed with something else, fear. But he wasn't ready to run yet. Not until he understood. He clenched his teeth. Tell me who you are. Steven paused. The customers leaned forward, waiting. Razor's men stared, holding their breath. Sandra swallowed, terrified of the answer. Steven finally spoke, voice low, steady, unshakable. I've stopped dangerous men before. Men worse than you. Men who didn't walk away. He stared into Razor's eyes. And if you stay, you'll become one of them. Razor felt a chill crawl down his spine. This wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Razor's chest rose and fell with quick, shallow breaths as he processed Steven's words. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to back off. But pride, deadly, stupid pride, kept him standing. His men watched him anxiously, nursing their swollen wrists and bruised egos. They had never seen Razor hesitate. Not once. Not ever. But tonight was different. Steven Seagal stood like an immovable mountain between Razor and the rest of the diner. Calm, centered, unbothered. His presence alone felt like a warning. Razor tried to shake off the fear crawling up his spine. No way, he muttered to himself. He's just some freakishly strong old man. He forced a laugh and took a step forward. So that's it. Razor scoffed, spreading his arms. You're some kind of hero? A tough guy with a mysterious past? What? Were you in the military or something? Steven didn't answer, but his silence spoke louder than any confession. One of Razor's bikers whispered, Boss, I've seen dudes fight like that on deployment. This guy, he moves like special forces. Another added, no, higher than that. The way he blocks hits without hurting people, that's elite-level restraint. That's someone who controlled violence for years. Razor snapped, shut up. All of you. But even he couldn't deny what he'd witnessed. He turned back to Steven with narrowed eyes. You know what I think? Razor said slowly. I think you're hiding. And people only hide when they've done something they regret. Steven's eyes flickered, not with anger, but with something deeper. Something Razor couldn't read. Sandra, standing behind the counter, finally spoke up in a shaking voice. Please stop provoking him. You've done enough. Razor smirked. Oh no, sweetheart. We're just getting started. He leaned forward, challenging Steven with every inch of his posture. Because I'm not leaving until I know who the hell you really are. The customers murmured nervously. Several held up their phones, recording every second. Steven's voice came out low and steady. It's better for you if you walk away. Razor laughed sharply, though fear trembled in his tone. You think you can scare me with your monk routine? I don't scare. I make people scared. He gestured at his crew. Look around, old man. We're the King's Highway crew. We run this territory. We answer to no one. Steven's gaze softened. That's exactly why you're headed toward destruction. The word struck Razor harder than any punch. A strange silence settled between them. Heavy, suffocating. Steven continued. Violence feels like power when you're young. But all it gives you is enemies. Sooner or later, someone stronger comes along. Someone you can't bully. Someone you can't intimidate. That moment is coming for you. Razor's jaw clenched. Yeah? You gonna be that guy? Steven didn't blink. I don't want to be. But if you force it, I won't hesitate. Razor's face tightened with rage. Rage at Steven. Rage at his men for being beaten. Rage at himself for being afraid. He threw his hands up dramatically. Fine. You want me to leave people alone? You want me to walk away? Then tell me who you are. Right now. Steven hesitated. For the first time, hesitation appeared on the old warrior's face. Sandra noticed it. So did Razor. You don't want to tell me? What? Razor taunted. Because you've got something to hide? Something dark? Something you're running from? Steven's jaw flexed. Razor stepped closer, lowering his voice. What were you before this little diner life? A criminal? A mercenary? A killer? Steven's eyes flashed. Cold, sharp, lethal. Careful, he warned. But Razor leaned in, testing the limit. Were you military? CIA? Some black ops ghost they don't even admit exists. The customers gasped. One teenager whispered, "Is that true? Could he really be?" Another replied, "It wouldn't surprise me after what he did." Steven remained silent, and that silence made everything worse. Razer suddenly smiled, slowly, darkly, as if he had just figured something out. "You know what?" he said. "I bet you were someone dangerous. Someone the government used, then threw away." Steven's fist tightened at his side. Razer kept pushing. "That's why you're here in the middle of nowhere, flipping pancakes and refilling coffee. Because you've got nowhere else to go. You're a washed-up has-been hiding from your past." Sandra stepped forward. "That's enough." But Steven raised a hand gently, stopping her from intervening. He took a slow breath. And then, for the first time, Steven spoke with weight. A voice filled with decades of memories, battles, scars, and secrets. "I've walked away from a life that destroyed good men," he said softly. "A life where one mistake could cost lives. A life I don't want anymore." Razor's smirk faltered. Steven continued, his voice calm but unshakably strong. "But don't confuse peace with weakness. I know exactly what you are, Razor. Men like you thrive on fear, because without it, you have nothing." Razor stiffened as if struck. Steven stepped closer, eye to eye with him. "You want to know who I am?" Steven said quietly. "I am someone who learned how to end threats. Permanently. But I am choosing not to." The words settled over the diner like a chilling fog. Razor's bravado wavered. For the first time, he took a step back. "You're bluffing," he muttered. But he didn't sound convinced. Steven looked around the diner, at the terrified families, the shaken truckers, the nervous staff. "I'm not bluffing," he said. "I'm protecting." Then he looked Razor dead in the eyes. "And right now, the only person you need protection from is yourself." The entire diner froze. Razor's face twisted with a war between fear and fury. He had reached the breaking point. The diner felt suspended in time. Every breath held, every movement frozen, waiting for whatever came next. Razor stood before Steven, breathing hard, indecision flickering across his eyes. For the first time all night, he wasn't sure of himself. Not sure of his strength. Not sure of his men. And definitely not sure about the man standing inches away from him. Steven Seagal didn't move, didn't blink, didn't raise a fist. He just watched Razor with a calmness that felt more threatening than any weapon. Razor tried to hold on to his pride. "Tough words," he spat. "But anyone can talk big." Steven didn't answer. Before Razor could push further, the diner door swung open with a sharp bang. Everyone jumped. Two sheriff deputies rushed inside, hands resting on their holsters. Their eyes scanned the room. The mess, the broken chairs, the bruised bikers, and finally landed on Steven. And both officers immediately straightened up. "Sir," the first deputy said, almost reverently, "we got a distress call. Are you all right?" The customers exchanged confused looks. "Sir? Why were they calling a cook, sir?" Razor's eyes widened. "What the hell?" The second deputy shook his head at the sight of the King's Highway crew. "Oh boy, you idiots picked the wrong diner." One biker snapped. "Who are you calling idiots?" The deputy didn't even look at him. He kept his eyes on Steven. "Do you need us to handle this, Commander?" The diner fell into absolute silence. "Commander." The word hung like thunder. Razor's jaw went slack. "Commander," he whispered. "What commander?" Sandra's eyes widened. "Steven, what are they talking about?" The first deputy stepped forward. "Commander Seagal." "Sir." Your alarm button triggered. We rolled as fast as we could. Sandra turned to Steven slowly, stunned. You have a police alarm button?" Steven sighed, his secret slipping out faster than he wanted. "I prefer not to use it," he said quietly. "But when people's lives are in danger..." The deputy cut in. "Sir, we alerted the state troopers as well. They're en route." Razor's face lost its color. "State troopers? For a diner fight?" The teenager filming whispered to his sister. I knew he wasn't normal. The second deputy finally faced the gang. You boys understand who this man is. Razer swallowed hard. And no. The deputy lifted an eyebrow. This is Commander Steven Seagal, retired Navy SEAL, ex-CIA liaison, federal contractor, one of the top hand-to-hand combat instructors the military ever had. The customers gasped. One trucker muttered, "Holy, no wonder he moved like that." Razer stumbled back as if someone hit him. Steven didn't look proud. He looked tired, like someone who had tried to leave a violent past behind, only to have it dragged back out into the light. "I'm not that man anymore," Steven said quietly. "I just own a diner now." The deputy shook his head. "Sir, you might have retired, but your reputation didn't." Razer's bikers exchanged horrified looks. One whispered, "We fought a Navy SEAL commander?" Another groaned, "Bro, we're dead." Razer tried to regain composure, but his voice shook. You think I'm scared of some old SEAL?" The first deputy barked a laugh. "Old SEAL? Son, he's trained men who were too dangerous for the military. You know why this diner stays untouched? Because every biker gang within 200 miles knows who owns it, except you." Razer's mouth went dry. Steven stepped forward calmly. "I tried to let you walk away," he said, "but you kept pushing." Razer's men backed into the walls. One held up his hands, terrified. We didn't know. Nobody told us." The second deputy smirked. "You didn't ask." Razer raised trembling fists, trying to salvage the last scraps of dignity. This is stupid. I am not scared of him." But even he didn't believe his own words. The deputies stood ready, but Steven lifted a hand. "No cuffs," he said. "No tasers. No violence. Not unless they force your hand." Razer stared at Steven, confused. Why aren't you having them arrest us?" Steven sighed deeply. "Because I've seen enough lives ruined by anger. You think you're invincible because you have numbers and bikes. But deep down, you know you're lost." Razer's lips trembled. Steven continued, "You're not a leader. You're a scared man pretending to be one." The words pierced deeper than any punch. Razer blinked rapidly, suddenly unsure if he wanted to fight or cry. "You had a chance to leave peacefully," Steven said softly. "But you chose fear. Fear of looking weak. Fear of losing your men." He paused. "Real strength is walking away." Razer swallowed, Adam's apple bobbing. The deputies stepped closer. "You want to keep this going?" one asked Razer. Razer shook his head weakly. "And no, I don't." His men exhaled in relief. But just then, just when it seemed Razer might surrender, his pride snapped again. "Wait!" Razer shouted, voice cracking. If you're some big Navy SEAL, then prove it." The customers gasped. Sandra whispered, "Oh no." Razer pointed a trembling finger at Steven. "Fight me. One-on-one. No weapons. No deputies. If you win, we leave forever. If I win, you admit you're just an old fraud." The diner froze. Steven studied him quietly. Razer's men stared at their leader like he'd lost his mind. "Boss, don't," one begged. "You can't take him." Razer ignored them, fists shaking. "Come on, old man," he hissed. "Show me what a Navy SEAL can do." Steven breathed out slowly, the kind of exhale a man gives when he knows what must come next. He stepped forward, eyes steady. "You really want the truth?" he murmured. Razer nodded, terrified but stubborn. "Fine," Steven said, and the diner went silent. Because the fight was about to begin. Every eye in the diner locked onto Steven and Razer as they stepped into the center of the room. Tables had been pushed back, chairs moved aside, customers pressed against the walls. Phones were raised. Hearts were pounding. This wasn't just a fight. This was the end of a storm. Razer's fists shook, not from excitement, but from fear he couldn't hide anymore. He knew he couldn't win. But pride had dragged him too far to back out now. Steven stood in front of him, posture relaxed, eyes steady. He looked like he was preparing for a meditation session, not a fight. Razer snarled to mask his nerves. "Come on then. Let's see what you got." Steven simply nodded. Razer rushed forward first, swinging hard with a wild right hook. a desperate punch powered by adrenaline and ego. Steven stepped aside with a calm precision, barely moving his feet. Razer's punch cut through empty air. Steven didn't counter. He didn't need to. Razer let out a frustrated roar and swung again, faster, harder. Steven caught his wrist with one hand, using Razer's own momentum to twist him off balance. Razer stumbled, nearly fell, and crashed into a booth. Gasps filled the diner. The deputies didn't move. They knew Steven had it fully under control. Razer pushed himself back up, panting, deciding, stupidly, to try again. "You scared to hit back?" he shouted. Steven shook his head gently. "I don't hit people unless I have to." Razer's face twisted with humiliation and rage. He charged again. This time, Steven stepped inside Razer's swing, tapped his elbow, redirected the force, and used just 2 fingers and a pivot of the hip to send Razer flipping onto his back. The customers shouted in disbelief. Did he just flip him with one hand? Oh my God, he's not even breaking a sweat. Razer groaned on the floor, breath knocked out of him. Still, he refused to give up. He climbed to his knees, eyes glassy. "I'm not done." Steven crouched beside him, speaking quietly. "You are. You've been done since you walked in the door." Razer tried swinging from the ground, slow, weak, desperate. Steven caught his fist midair and held it gently but firmly. "Look at your men," Steven said. Razer turned his head. His crew stood huddled near the door, some crying, some shaking, all terrified. They weren't looking at Razer for leadership anymore. They were waiting, hoping, for Steven to end this nightmare safely. Steven continued, "You want to be respected? Then stop leading them into destruction." Razer's breathing slowed. His shoulders sagged. The fight drained from his body, replaced by something unexpected, shame. Steven loosened his grip and stood. Razer stayed kneeling, staring at the floor. The diner was more silent than it had been all night. Finally, Razer whispered, "I'm sorry." His men lowered their heads. Steven nodded softly. "Then leave. All of you. And don't come back unless you're ready to be better men." Razer stood shakily. For once, he didn't argue. He turned to his crew. "Let's go." The bikers scattered, rushing outside without a single word of protest. Razer lingered for a moment, looking back at Steven. "You could have humiliated me," he said quietly. "You could have broken me. But you didn't." "What?" Steven wiped his hands on his apron, his voice calm. "Because breaking men creates more violence. But teaching men creates change." Razer nodded, swallowing hard, and walked out the door. The diner erupted in applause. Customers clapped. Some cheered. A few even cried, from relief, from shock, from the emotional weight of what they'd witnessed. Sandra rushed to Steven's side. "Are you okay?" she asked. Steven smiled gently. "I'm fine. Just another day." The deputies grinned. "Commander, you really should open a dojo instead of a diner." Steven chuckled. "I'm retired. This place is peaceful." The deputies raised their eyebrows at the destroyed furniture, but said nothing. One of the teenagers approached Steven. "Sir, this video," he lifted his phone, "is going to go viral." Steven sighed, but his smile was warm. "Then I hope people learn something from it." The teen nodded. "Yeah, they will." Within hours, the footage did go viral. Millions watched Steven Seagal, a quiet diner owner, humble a violent gang without hatred, ego, or unnecessary force. The final caption on the video read, "Real power is peace." And everywhere the video reached, people typed the same word in the comments. Respect.